Welcome to BBC News, broadcasting at home and around the globe. I'm Julie Peacock. Our top stories. Nearly 1,000 people have been detained following a second day of violent protests in Turkey. Police and demonstrators fought running battles in the centre of Istanbul and in the capital. To go home, are there any signs that that's happening?
Well, see.
The authorities in Iraq say they've uncovered an Al-Qaeda plot to use chemical weapons inside the country and to smuggle them to Europe and North America. A spokesman for the Defence Ministry said military intelligence had discovered 3 workshops for manufacturing the chemicals, which included nerve gas. 5 men have been arrested. Tim Allman has more. The United Nations and the Red Cross have issued near-simultaneous appeals for immediate access to be granted to the Syrian city of Qusair. Conditions there are reported to be desperate after 2 weeks of attacks by Syrian government forces. Thousands of residents are trapped with little food, water or medicine. Debbie Faker is from the International Red Cross in Geneva. She says the situation is worsening by the day. For them to get out of the city. Would it be possible for you to go in there, given that, to all intents and purposes, this is a war zone at the moment? That was Debbie Faker from the International Red Cross talking to me about the situation in Syria. 9 people have been killed and over 100 injured in a series of tornadoes that have once again hit the US state of Oklahoma. Heavy thunderstorms and damaging winds have led to widespread flooding and hampered efforts to begin the clear-up. Here's our North America correspondent, David Willis. Well, let's see what's been making headlines around the world with a look at the international papers. This is BBC World News. I'm Julie Peacock. The latest headlines. More now on the demonstrations in Turkey. The BBC's James Reynolds is based near the city centre and he updated me on the situation a little earlier. Jan has said that he wants the protesters to leave the square and other areas where they've been protesting. It doesn't sound like there's any sign of that. A campaign against a shopping centre. What are they protesting about now? Do you think the Prime Minister is now, and his government, at the way that these protests have seemed to have taken off and grown over the past 2 days? James Reynolds there in Istanbul. And in other news, a hospital in the Kurdish part of northern Iraq is admitting as many as 300 women a month for self-inflicted burns. Many have self-harmed after being condemned for their relationships with men in what is a conservative society. From Erbil in northern Iraq, the BBC's Mahmoud Hamichi reports on this disturbing trend. The star of the BBC science fiction series Doctor Who's announced he's leaving the show. Lizo Mzimba reports. Well, that's something to look forward for this Christmas. You're watching BBC World News. I'm Julie Peacock. The latest headlines from BBC News. I'm Julie Peacock. Now on BBC News, Dateline London. Welcome to BBC News, broadcasting at home and around the globe. I'm Julie Peacock. Our top stories. Nearly 1,000 people have been detained following a second day of violent protests in Turkey. Police and demonstrators fought running battles in the centre of Istanbul and in the capital, Ankara. The authorities in Iraq say they've uncovered an Al-Qaeda plot to use chemical weapons inside the country and to smuggle them to Europe and North America. A spokesman for the Defence Military said military intelligence had discovered 3 workshops for manufacturing the chemicals, which included nerve gas. 5 men have been arrested. Tim Allman has more. 9 people have been killed and over 100 injured in a series of tornadoes that have hit once again in the US state of Oklahoma. Heavy thunderstorms and damaging winds have led to widespread flooding and hampered efforts to begin the clear-up. Here's our North America correspondent, David Willis. Stay with us on BBC News, still to come. Our news correspondent Andy Moore said the police have also arrested 2 other men as part of the investigation into the soldier's death. Nearly 60 anti-fascist demonstrators have been arrested outside the Houses of Parliament after confronting a rally by the British National Party. A 22-year-old has appeared before Telford magistrates in Shropshire charged with the murder of 17-year-old Georgia Williams. Jamie Reynolds was remanded in custody. Phil Connell reports. Let's get more now on the tornadoes in the United States. Chris McBee is a storm chaser and runs the Central Oklahoma Storm Chasers Group. He says the storm was one of the more serious to hit the state. I heard though that despite the fact that it wasn't as severe, that 9 people still lost their lives. Why is that happening? Why are people still losing their lives in these situations? We saw that this tornado really got going around 8 p.m. local time, and it was a busy time. It was rush hour. How unusual is that? That people might think when they're looking at some of the footage that yourself and your colleagues were gathering, is why do you do it? Why do you go out there and risk your lives to capture these storms? This is BBC News, the headlines. When you were there,
it was.
Yes.
I thank you very much for contacting me.
Thank you. Well, thousands of people across Europe have been demonstrating over what they call painful austerity measures. They're angry at the troika of international powers they blame for growing economic hardships. Katarina Moe has an overview of what's been happening. There have been new allegations this evening over lobbying in Parliament. The claims involved 3 members of the House of Lords who were filmed apparently agreeing to put down amendments to further the interests of a fictitious company in return for payment. Our political reporter Adam Fleming gave this update. Hundreds of people have marched through central London to protest against the government's badger cull. Later today, Brazil face England in the first official football match at the rebuilt Maracanã Stadium in Rio de Janeiro. The match, which had been dominated by concerns about public safety and last-minute construction work, is seen as a key test event before Brazil prepares to hold the next year's World Cup finals. Laura Davis reports from Rio. The actor Matt Smith is to leave Doctor Who, the world's longest-running science fiction TV series. After 4 years as the Time Lord, viewers will see Smith's Doctor regenerate in the 2013 Christmas special. The 30-year-old actor said it had been an honour to play the part, but offered no clues to his successor. And it's only 205 days before the mystery's revealed. Next, it's the weather with Nick Miller. The latest headlines from BBC News, I'm Julie Peacock. Next up on Our World, Frank Gardner goes to the violent heart of Los Angeles and inside one of the country's busiest trauma units. He and his team were allowed unique access to the hospital where they see firsthand the ongoing consequences of gun violence. A warning that viewers may find some images in this programme upsetting.